Hi, I'm Shane Jones. Making headlines tonight. An organized crime anti-corruption unit to be set up. New water zones coming to allow for greater land development. Rise Life policyholders to receive their monies before year end. And in sports, a senior Wendy's coach pleads with the players to improve their fielding ahead of tomorrow's Tri-Nation Series.
Broadcasting from our studios in the Pine St. Michael, this is CBC News Night, starting now.
Leading the news at 7, some major announcements coming out of government's first post-cabinet press briefing this evening related to water, tourism, foreign affairs, and crime and security. Now, today's briefing included remarks from Prime Minister Mia Amor-Motley, Water Resources Minister Wilfred Abrams, Foreign Affairs Minister Senator Jerome Walcott, and Tourism Minister Carrie Simmons. Our Ryan Broom joins us live now with the details. Okay, Ryan, so sounds like some pretty heavy stuff. Bring us up to date.
Definitely. Good evening, Shane. Good evening, viewers. Well, as you know, Prime Minister Motley initially announced the start of these press conferences last month, and they're essentially intended to give the public an up-to-date picture of the major issues being addressed by the Cabinet. Now, in getting the ball rolling today, Prime Minister Motley revealed that Cabinet has agreed to establish a major organized crimes and anti-corruption agency.
The estimates this year, you will see an amount voted to be able to get it off the ground of $1 million for anti-corruption. But government doesn't happen by just simply saying we want something to happen. You have to set up an established framework, and in this case, it is required to both have legislation and then personnel. Cabinet also agreed that Colonel Quinton, former head of the Barbados Defense Force, will be assisting as the expert in helping us to get this major crimes and anti-corruption agency off the ground. Before we get to the stage of hiring anyone else, we need to have the legislative framework.
Meanwhile, Water Resources Minister Wilfred Abrams had a major announcement of his own. Plans are in motion to establish new water zones in Barbados that will see an end to the traditional zones 1 to 5. And this move is expected to free up about 4% of more of Barbados' overall land space for development, with an emphasis on inland and coastal water protection and preservation.
We're going from 39.3 square kilometers to 23 square kilometers in the new Zone A. In Zone 2, which was 55.9 square kilometers, we are now down to 46 square kilometers, and there's a reduction in each of the corresponding zones. So that much land is now being freed up for purposes that were previously blocked from it. So we should now have a little bit more land for development and a lot more breathing space as we attempt to develop Barbados, provide housing, and to spur economic activity.
Meanwhile, Minister Carrie Simmons has revealed that some key studies on the cruise tourism sector have been completed through the National Cruise Development Commission, and they have shown some deficiencies which government intends to tackle through the establishment of strategic subcommittees. Now, he says the visitor experience must be improved significantly in a way that gives visitors far more authentic Barbadian experiences. Now, touching on other major undertakings in the sector, he says that the establishment of a major hotel plant close to the Bridgetown port could help to capitalize on cruise tourism in a very real possibility.
Considerable consideration has been given to the possibility of hotel plant in the vicinity of the Bridgetown port. In fact, it was about 2 weeks ago that we hosted an investment conference here in Barbados where we had representatives from the tourism sector involved in hotel development, drawn from around the world. They were on island for about 4 days, and we did look extensively not only in the area of Trevor's Way, but we also looked extensively at that entire Carlisle Bay strip, where I think that it is easy to say there are about 12 sites which are ripe for signature investment.
So there you have it, Shane, some of the major issues coming out of this first press briefing from the Prime Minister and the Cabinet. Back to you, Shane.
Thanks so much, Ryan. Well, by September this year, policyholders and claimants of Resolution Life Assurance Company Limited should finally receive the payments due to them. The timeline was revealed by Minister in the Ministry of Finance Ryan Strawn during a town hall meeting last evening at the Lloyd Erskine Sandyford Center. ResLife took over the portfolio previously held by Cleco International Life Insurance Limited over a year ago, but last month advised that it was closing its doors. Minister Strawn says government realizes a solution has been long in coming.
The reality is that many of the persons in this room obviously have waited 10 years to get to this point. And all we're asking you to do at this stage is, when the plan is rolled out, and I know that there's a well-defined process, and I want each and every one of you in here, as well as those listening, to trust the process.
Around 21,000 policyholders will receive payouts from the settlement package, made up of $103 million in cash and $300 million in bonds. Minister Strawn says a major consideration in government's plan of action for ResLife was to ensure taxpayers were not unduly burdened.
In the context of where the economy was when we took over last May, we had to make some very, very tough decisions about how we were going to get ourselves, in terms of Barbados, out of this situation. And then, to the extent that Cleco/Resolution Life fits into that, it really would have been unfair to the taxpayers of Barbados to be exposed for the resolution of a private transaction.
Meanwhile, CEO of ResLife, Cheryl Senhouse, gave an outline of the primary eligibility criteria for payouts.
If the policy was active as at the 31st of March 2019, and in addition to that, did the policy have a net positive cash value or a positive fund value? And this is important because some policyholders would have stopped paying their policies and simply allowed them to lapse.
Government has moved to ensure workers retrenched under the BERT program, particularly 84 former workers of the Ministry of Transport, Works and Maintenance, will be paid their gratuity and pensions where eligible. The Senate yesterday debated the Public Service Retrenched Workers Bill 2019 to make this a reality. In leading off the debate, Minister of Innovation, Science and Smart Technology, Senator Kay McConney, says the bill will put money in the pockets of those former government workers who had 10 years or more of service.
They will now, should this bill be passed, be able to get their gratuity at 25% of what is their pensionable earning immediately, or as soon as government is able to pay them from the consolidated fund, and then the reduced pension, which will be the remainder of 75%, would be payable to them when they reach the pensionable age.
In her contribution to the debate, Independent Senator Tony Moore says it is sad almost 7 months after workers were retrenched from government, legislation is now being passed to deal with the money due to them. Senator Moore, who is also General Secretary of the Barbados Workers Union, criticized officials who were sitting on paperwork, leaving those retrenched financially unstable.
What is distressing, therefore, is that we would have a situation now where governments have changed, or parties in government have changed, but where the people who were supposed to be very instrumental in advancing this paper and whatever had to be done to correct the problem, to correct the confusion, that these people are still in place.
Opposition Senator Caswell Franklin says he has a fundamental problem with the legislation regarding retrenched workers getting their pensions. He says government has given those that have gone home the impression they will be getting their pensions as soon as the money becomes available. However, he says they cannot, as some of them are not at pensionable age.
The law as it stands now, and it still stands, not back then, but it still stands. As a matter of fact, it passed in 1985. The Act is number 1985, number 18. It says that if you are in receipt of your pension and you have not yet reached retirement age, the government can call upon you to take a job. That's subsection 1. Subsection 2 then says, if you refuse to take the job, your pension can be suspended until you reach 60, retirement age.
The Barbados Union of Teachers wants to gather feedback directly from its members on a range of subjects, starting with safety in schools. And to do so, BUT President Sean Spencer says they will send surveys which will help the union to identify and determine what training and support teachers will need to ensure their safety at schools. The information, according to Mr. Spencer, will also help to find strategies to prevent violence in schools and help bolster the union's position on school safety planning. This all comes a day after the Barbados Secondary Teachers Union held a meeting with its members to discuss the escalating violence in schools.
That's for my.
As the island prepares to tap into the medicinal marijuana industry, Barbadians will gain further insight into the benefits of the plant. Top cannabis experts and doctors from around the world are expected on island next month for the first annual Barbados Medical Cannabis Education Conference. The free two-day event will be held on June 29th and 30th. Rehab and pain specialist Dr. Harley Mosley says research shows marijuana has many uses. Dr. Mosley was a guest on CBC TV8's Morning Barbados.
That's for my practice alone, where we see a lot of people who are in a lot of chronic pain from fibromyalgia, the same migraines, and also any other pains, chronic musculoskeletal pains from sports injuries. Just to educate them alone on the possible use of cannabis, and for some of them to actually try it without obviously education, because given the framework, the legal framework that we have to work with here, we can't actively prescribe it. But we've been getting some excellent anecdotes of how it has helped them and how it's given them back their quality of life.
Managing partner with Canada Management Resources, Sarah Seal, has welcomed news of government's plans for a medical marijuana program.
When I saw the news last year that the Prime Minister was looking to legalize on the medical side, I don't think you could have heard my scream of joy from all the way from Canada, because I've seen firsthand exactly what it's done there. I've seen what it's done for the economy. I've seen what it's done from a business perspective. I work very, very closely with patients and doctors, and so I've seen from a medical, I've seen medical miracles. I mean, that's the closest that you can say for it. I've seen miracles happen.
Barbados and other countries with aging populations will continue to face higher retirement ages. They will also have to consider strengthening pension and healthcare systems. Those observations have been made by the Director General of the International Labour Organization, Guy Ryder. He notes demographic changes have affected the future of work.
We have to then adapt workplaces so that those who are asked to work into older age are able to do so in conditions which are possible and fair. So we need to do a bit of labour market engineering on that. And I think we do that because I would not be in favour of weakening social protection systems as a way of ensuring their sustainability. I actually think we need more social protection, better pensions, better health care. So we shouldn't be cutting back there.
With the prediction of people working longer, Mr. Ryder believes employers will have to consider refurbishing offices and workspaces to meet the needs of older staff.
Many older workers want to remain active as long as the conditions are comfortable enough to let them work in decent conditions, not asking them to go beyond the limits that we all have. And when it's tough jobs, when it's manual jobs, I think you have to make due account of that.
Barbados is close to introducing automatic referral of cases for mediation in the courts. The update came during a closing ceremony for a mediation sensitization workshop. The objective is to sensitize all parties about the role of alternative dispute resolution, in particular, mediation in the delivery of civil justice in Barbados. Chief Justice Sir Marston Gibson says there's no set timeline.
The reason I shan't say that is because we are still going through some teething issues with our software at the court, but that it will happen. That I will announce in a practice note that as of a particular date, every matter filed, assuming that the claimant did not specifically ask for mediation, every matter filed in the court will be submitted to mediation. Okay? Because we now, as I said, we now have 43, and we soon will have 53, and those persons are ready, willing.
The Judicial Reform and Institutional Strengthening Jurist Project, along with the Caribbean Court of Justice and the Government of Canada, are among the partners in the venture. Project Director at the Jurist Project, Gloria Richards-Johnson, says to date they have provided court annex mediator training to over 100 people in Barbados, Guyana, and the Eastern Caribbean.
Jurist is currently evaluating the impact of the mediation training and will continue to support the enhancement of court annex mediation as an alternative to dispute resolution across jurisdictions such as Guyana, member states of the Eastern Caribbean, Belize, and Barbados where possible. My role here today is a very simple one. It is to tell you about the Jurist Project and the good work that we have been doing across the region to strengthen judicial systems. As you're aware, the use of mediation, once it really takes off, is a tremendous assistance to reducing backlogs in our jurisdictions.
The Deputy Director of the Caribbean Regional Development Program says there are many misconceptions about mediation. He adds it has proven to be an effective tool.
Most people know that it is a way to resolve disputes other than courtroom litigation. Some think it is but a glorified name for negotiation and out-of-court settlement. Others cannot distinguish it from arbitration. At the social welfare and NGO level, many have taken mediation as equivalent to conciliation. Then there is another far more stubborn misconception shared by lay and professional people alike about mediation. That is whether mediation is truly effective. Is it really as good as a facilitator said it was over the past 2 days? There are still many in the legal profession who are skeptical about mediation.
Checking in with our regional neighbors now, Guyana is said to be transforming into a country that all Guyanese can be proud of. The Minister of Finance says the country's economic performance demonstrates its transformation from a narco state.
Ghana's better than expected economic performance of a 4.1% gross domestic product growth for 2018 was praised by numerous stakeholders, except the opposition leader. Finance Minister Winston Jordan opines that in an immature democracy such as Guyana's, the opposition will never seek to give praise where it is due.
Even if you had a growth rate of 10%, where everybody was smiling in Guyana, they'll still find a fault. Or they will attach it to the fact that it originated from something that they would have done in the past. So I don't really pay too much attention because I figured that is what the opposition will do, and particularly this opposition leader would do.
The finance minister noted that the opposition leader recently acknowledged but attempted to deflect from the good economic performance of the past years. Minister Jordan reminded that the sugar industry's problems, for example, began under the PPP administration, which refused to address them.
While the workers may have lost their job under this government, it's not this government destroyed the sugar industry. It is not this government destroyed the rice industry. It's not this government had a narco state running.
Trinidad and Tobago's Water and Sewage Authority has been advised to implement a 10-year-old working plan to aggressively replace aged pipelines. The recommendation was made by a joint select committee of Parliament that examined the maintenance of drains and roadways, as we hear in the CNC3 report.
It doesn't matter where you drive in Trinidad and Tobago. It seems as though potholes and uneven surfaces are the new road designs. If you ask most citizens, they'll point fingers at the Water and Sewage Authority. Well, this latest report from a Joint Select Committee on Land and Physical Infrastructure shows that roads under the purview of the Ministry of Works and Transport have reached their design life and are generally in a fair to poor condition. The committee says while the ministry has an adequate system in place for maintenance of roadways, it recommends greater collaboration amongst government agencies for road paving to prevent instances of paving over old lines lines, which can result in leakages.
If the Ministry of Works and Transport is going to fix a particular road, if they are letting WASA know that, listen, we're going to fix this road at this particular point in time, do you have in your work schedule leakage or aged pipes that need to be fixed then? So WASA, the Ministry of Works and Transport, is removing the top part of the road. That is something that WASA would have had to have done if they went by themselves.
The report states that WASA always engages in some form of restoration to a road it has worked on. However, according to the committee, due to limited resources, permanent restoration is delayed. Therefore, it suggests the allocation WASA receives for road restoration be increased. The committee stresses the need for the authority to put steps in place to reduce its staggering debt level. In fact, it recommends that WASA use a name and shame approach to dealing with delinquent customers, whereby customers' names are published via newspapers and on its websites. The committee also suggests the authority adopt a metering system.
In Jamaica, police in Manchester say officers are facing challenges due to increasing reports of people going missing. An inspector says this has placed added pressure on the police. More from CVM TV.
A call being made by police officers for parents to monitor their children due to resource constraints in handling missing reports. The call comes from Inspector Simon McCormack from the Manchester Police Division, who says socialization in the home is required to reduce these incidents.
We have had 5 so far, 3 have returned, and we are using this medium to encourage parents, guardians, siblings to monitor the children when they leave home, when they are coming home. It is putting added pressure on the police in the Christiana space especially. And we are seeking the public's help in helping to find these girls.
The inspector notes that the police has been relentless in its move to get children to refrain from loitering in public spaces after school hours.
The persons who have these persons under their care to just assist us, be more vigilant in their efforts to have the students, when they leave school in the evening, to come home and encourage them to be home. We ask them to also have some means of communication.
The call is being echoed by a member of the Community Safety and Security Branch of the Jamaica Constabulary Force, Inspector Denise Butler, who says parents must implement and maintain curfews for their children.